Keep growing, keep fighting, don't lose your way. Keep digging, keep striving day after day. In the garden we find our strength, our core. Keep growing through it all.
Hi, John Morgan here, and welcome to this month's episode of the Keep Growing podcast. During the summer, we take a look at weekly gardening tasks and the weather forecast for the Mid-Ohio Valley. Now that we're in the depths of winter, we're taking a look each month at things that you can do right now to get a jump on the gardening season. An often overlooked aspect of gardening is planning. Getting the most out of your garden space from the earliest part of spring to the first frosts of fall, planning is one of the best things you can do. Personally, I rely on a few planning tools. I keep a daily journal that I use to organize, everything. My plan starts this time of year with a sketch of my garden beds and a list of early spring plants. Then, once I have seeds in the ground, I use an app called Airtable to track my crops. By adding in the days to maturity, I can calculate the projected harvest date. That helps me later in the season plan for succession planting and crop rotation. Let's zoom out to a 10,000-foot view of garden planning. Step 1. Choose your garden type. First, consider the type of garden that suits your space and lifestyle. Traditional victory gardens, they require a plot of land, and they're perfect for those of us with a yard and a little bit more space. Container gardening. It's ideal for balconies or patios. It uses pots for each plant or group of plants. Then you have sort of the in-between, raised beds. They're great for controlling soil quality, drainage, and keeping pests at bay. And then finally, vertical gardening. It's useful for really small spaces where you're growing upward on trellises and walls. I grew a traditional victory garden for years. But a few years ago, I went to a bit of a hybrid layout. Half of my garden is raised beds for crops like cabbage, squash, tomatoes, herbs, etc. Then the other half is for larger volume row crops that I'll be canning, like beans and corn. It's a more efficient use of space with less weeding. As I get older, working on raised beds is less bending and kneeling. And also, they're more visually appealing. Eventually, I want to add a seating area to my raised bed garden. Step 2. Location, location, location. Vegetables need sunlight, at least 6 hours a day. So pick a spot where sun loves to linger. Also consider access to water. Your garden will need regular watering, so proximity to a water source is key. Soil quality. Test your soil or prepare to amend it. Vegetables prefer well-drained, fertile soil. Depending on your state, many state extension services will test your soil and give you recommendations for treating it. Finally, proximity to your home. The closer your garden, the more likely you'll tend to it regularly. Step 3. Decide what to grow. Choosing what to plant can be as much fun as the harvest. First, know your zone. Check your USDA hardiness zone to understand what grows best in your climate. For our region, here in the Mid-Ohio Valley, we're located in the zone 6 to 7 range. Second, succession planting. Plant in stages to have a continuous supply. For example, sow lettuce seeds every 2 weeks. Then as plants are harvested, you have younger plants maturing to take their place. This also works for swapping out seasonal crops. For example, snow peas planted in March might get swapped out for summer squash in May. Then the squash could be swapped out for turnips in the fall. Thirdly, you have family favorites. Focus on vegetables your household loves to eat. As I record this, I'm recovering from surgery to address a massive kidney stone that was in my left kidney. Analysis showed that the stone was primarily calcium oxalate. That means I'm going to start cutting crops that were high in oxalate. So I'm cutting out things like spinach in favor of low oxalate veggies like bok choy. Finally, what and where to buy. Buying seeds and starts is part of the fun. Based off prior experience, I know what plants I want to grow from seeds versus what I want to buy as starts from bulbs. For example, I rarely have luck starting tomatoes from seed. At Bob's, we carry seeds from a company called Botanical Interests. You can actually hear an interview with a representative from their company all the way back in episode 3 of this podcast. And if you're old-fashioned like me, I also enjoy sitting down with the Burpee catalog and just letting my imagination run wild. Step 4. Planning your layout. Sketch your garden on paper before anything goes on the ground. Now, I've gotten fancy when it comes to planning my landscape over the last few years. I use a drone to get aerial shots of my property, and then I map out my garden and landscape plan directly over it. For my larger landscape beds and wildflower areas, it helps me plan exactly how much seed, flats, potting mix, and mulch I will need. I actually start stockpiling potting mix and mulch right now. Along with that comes space management. Each plant needs room to grow, so research or use the seed packs to determine spacing guidelines. And then you also have crop rotation. Rotate crops each year to prevent soil depletion and pest buildup. A good example of this is corn and beans. So corn draws nitrogen from the soil. Beans add nitrogen back into the soil. So you want to rotate those crops seasonally so you're not depleting nitrogen out of the soil. And finally, paths. Include walkways for easy access and to prevent soil compaction. Step 5. A planting schedule. Timing is everything in gardening. Up first, you need to know start dates. Knowing when to start seeds indoors or when it's safe to plant outdoors after the last frost is important. This is something I've struggled with in the past. I start seedlings too early, and then they're leggy by the time I transplant them. Also, you need to plan time for hardening them off, basically taking them outside on warmer days to help them get stronger in the sunlight and the wind. The other thing is using a planting calendar. Create or find a calendar for your area to guide planting and harvesting. This goes back to the planning for crop rotation and succession planning. In our region, the West Virginia Extension Office produces a great gardening calendar. In fact, it's one of the tools I use for planning this podcast, and also Uncle Jim's Almanac over on the Bob's Market website. Hopefully this gives you some ideas for planning your garden. As I'm recording this, the snow is flying as we get the first big winter storm of 2025. I'm going to fix myself some hot tea in a bit, sketch out my garden beds, and take a look at the seed I have stored in the fridge to of course, keep growing. For a full transcript of this episode and more, check out the show notes at bobsmarket.com/keepgrowing. Copyright 2025, Bob's Market and Greenhouses, Incorporated. Also, with the new year, it's time to shake things up a bit. Here's our new theme song.
Hands deep in the dirt, sweat on your brow. Roots find a way, we don't know how. Seeds of hope in the silent ground. Cutting through the noise, plant love profound. Nurture this life as the sun beats down. Facing the storm, we don't turn around. Bounty from the earth, teaching us to be. From tiny seeds to towering trees. Keep growing, keep fighting, don't lose your way. Keep digging, keep striving day after day. In the garden we find our strength, our core. Keep growing through it all. Tangled weeds can't choke the dream. Branch out, defy the hostile scheme. With patient hands and a mind so bold, every story in the petals unfold. Blisters and blooms, a beautiful clash, turning the compost of ideas to ash. Breathe under nails, but hearts so clean. Gardeners whisper in the vibrant green. Keep growing, keep fighting, don't lose your way. Keep digging, keep striving day after day. In the garden we find our strength, our core. Keep growing through it all. Keep growing, keep fighting, don't lose your way. Keep digging, keep striving day after day. In the garden we find our strength, our core. Keep growing through it all. Tangled weeds can't choke the dream. Branch out, defy the hostile scheme. With patient hands and a mind so bold, every story in the petals unfold. Keep growing, keep fighting.